Okay, thanks everyone for coming. This is the inaugural talks of Deep Tech Melbourne. We're going to start off this week with a health-themed one, and in a couple of weeks we'll do another one around space. A couple of weeks after that we'll do another one around ag-tech, and then we'll sort of see if we've mustered enough people doing other interesting deep tech things to form other themed things. So if you know people, let us know. Jump in the Discord. Oh, someone's listening to the live stream. Oh, is that coming out? Can you turn the volume down? Can you work? All these brains in this room, can we work out the technology?
Very on-brand.
Exactly. Too smart.
Yeah. There we go. So, yeah, if you know people who are interested and they're involved in any kind of deep tech industry, like science-led entrepreneurial things, get them to join. Come to deeptech.org.au, jump in the Discord, keep the conversation going. I want to call out thanks to All Squares for sponsoring. It was a great space. They've done the pizzas and the drinks. Thank you. It's awesome. Also want to obviously thank everyone here for coming. And I think we're good to kick on. So I think first up, we've got Dr. Peter Goodin.
I can do a bit of an intro.
Oh, do you want to do an intro for both of you?
And get the slides.
All right. We need to shuffle.
Stay with me.
I'll retire.
So I'm actually really excited for tonight because Peter and I have known each other for a very, very long time now. We used to demonstrate lab to them several years ago. We did that, and then we've somehow go separate ways and then kind of come back together. Kind of similar startups in a similar industry. I feel like our talks tonight are going to be really complementary to technologies. So hopefully we don't much. But Peter is going to present IQ, where they're doing heaps of concussion monitoring and sports, and go into all of the nitty-gritty details there. While I work out, we've got like multiple screen share. So I'll just get that. Maybe we should have left the music on.
Right.
No. Not in a manner that people would.
All right. I'll go into here. Good on your end?
All good.
Oh, look at that.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah, so hi, thank you to the organisers for asking me to talk. Also, this is in the real world since the before time, so who knows? Well, you will. Anyway, so to begin with, a piece of alliteration in the presentation who are wordplay phobic. So the talk tonight is just a little bit about some in development, risks and head impact monitoring and potential for recovery and stuff like that. So HitIQ is in Australia. We have about full-time staff in Australia, across Asia, USA, and the UK as well. Our current clients include the Union, Rugby League, so NRL, football, college leagues, and soccer, or football, depending on where you're from, UK and Europe as well. In the research space, with current research with Monash University, UCLA, Reno, University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and then tucked away all the way down the bottom, AIM, which is to provide technology platforms that assist and rehabilitation of sports currently, but the aim is up to head injuries in general. To very quickly address the elephant in solved concussion detection. There we go. Thank you for coming to my TED talk. I'm trying to build towards it, though. The technology that I'm going to be presenting tonight does build towards that. So who am I? Very much to Sally for that wonderful introduction. I am the lead researcher, and I also do some moonlighting as well, and data analysis teacher in Australia. And I do some consulting again for another health tech who are developing a detection device. And before I run screaming from it, I had a part of about 10, 15 years, predominantly neuroscience, with under my belt, based arguably that I haven't used, then I use it very quickly after that. As you can probably tell, I'm wearing a mask. So obviously here is me without the mask sense. And then if you come across me on the finger guns all day, all night, right? Now, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it, what it is, my IQ has been a big thing that we need to devote an entire business towards it. You know, we tend to think of forward conditions where basically you might feel a little bit funny, and you know, you're fine. As the just get off, mate, you're fine, walk it off. It's a little bit more complicated. So concussion is a fairly serious medical condition, spectrum of things called traumatic brain injury side. But keep in mind that mild is a relative term, medically relevant, relative mild to, say, traveling and then connecting with the steering wheel after a sudden stop. Not particularly mild. Also fairly common, in 5 concussions per time for the AFL specifically. A lot of generation of concussion. Simplify all of this. It's along the line. It doesn't necessarily have to be to the head. It can be which generates enough force to generate displacement inside of the skull and the fluid, which causes shearing of the brain itself. These forces acting on the brain, which basically destroys connective pieces between, so for the neuroscientists and anatomy folks, connected to each other, and that there's a digress. And damage then leads to sort of issues and processing issues, and thinking style, so the way that we from the world around us and work with the world, so cognition. That the rotational forces are actually development of concussion than this. So twisty, squishy, as opposed to flatty kind of thing. That's also very important. Is that a harder hit doesn't necessarily of concussion. A perfect storm, basically, a particular impact with particular forces and arguably particularly given your individual anatomy and that morning, and it's so how do concussion? You know, why do we care? You got hit in the head. The problem is, you know, short term, there are some pain in the head and neck, not necessarily itself. there's also problems and potential nausea, especially with problems with mood stability, problems with cognition, so things like attention, memory, and and this is just sort of in the short term. Do tend to resolve fairly quickly, weeks, which is indicated by both somatic and cognitive. The problem is that during the symptoms, you are actually much more at risk in a situation where that can happen. Have worse symptoms from also your threshold for getting enough low. All right, cool. Inconvenience, but a couple of weeks. Yes, except in the long about folks who do get also over time, it can lead to called CTE. Why didn't I read the entire phrase? Because words are hard and illegal. So CTE it is of neural degeneration. All of these short-term effects are led to a self-sustaining system that's actually slowly being giant flu. Sorry. And of course, the problem here is, as folks who are unfortunately blessed with dementia know, when it comes to things like severe memory loss, quite a bit of confusion, things very inappropriate speech, and of course disorders. I believe this is the last slide on the sort of here for tech, not that. Concussion, great. No. How diagnosed by a doctor? Typically, it's done where we're looking at neuro, physical, and behavioral. Follow my hand up and down. Does it hurt? Turn your head and cough. No neck damage. And also things holding up 3 fingers. How many? By holding up 2. The other thing is it's medical imaging. So we can't use to detect it. We can, although these studies are not clinically reliable. One day they will be. The other thing that will comment, is the difference in reliable sign of concussion. This concussion, fantastic, fun stuff. The actual tech, which is the reason that folks are here, you have a fair few offering in active development, or actually I want to talk about mostly mouth guard or IMG. Of time, a couple of our VR cognitive. On top of that, we also have support, which is basically a record is responding to concussion, or when they've been cleared to return to play, development, which will actually connect a medical doctor in concussion management. So interested in head impacts. Instrumented mouth guard that we have, pretty much they all contain variation, 3 axis or 3-dimensional hertz, a gyroscope 800 hertz, which is part of the IMU has, as I say slightly, a much decreased measurement range compared to our 3-axis. We also have an infrared sensor known soon. So what basic mouth guard itself? We record the number of impacts when they're on field. So, not we can also record that have occurred when. So now we have anyway, actually, for a mouth guard, it also helps to protect lips. But however, with a mouth guard and take all of this and start manipulating it. One of the things that we can do is we can take the mouth guard information, form it into a standardized space, comparing one person to another. This standardized space and use it as an extract. Again, background as a neuroscience, it's simple and super simple. It's still better than nothing. And estimate the forces that the impact at what is roughly, which is what you're seeing here. Those time series, so for those not necessarily time series, it's literally just a time series. I apologize, I'm just not sure if folks background. Those time series and time series, and you can start to combine them in interesting head impact metrics. Talk about what is happening roughly. Use that information to risk curves. Yes, it is a lovely logic curve, isn't it? So that basically for each impact, a bit of a record about risk of something. The reason that I'm being vague is because this is what we can actually measure a little bit of. Predominantly used in automatic design and by the military, 3 forms, 3 classes, so we can actually get a risk assessment. Rotational, get a vision of concussion and TBI. Combine them both, we get absolutely no problems. Sorry if I love you dearly, but and in theory, should on concussion as well. Now, so we have a mouth guard. The mouth guard, everyone's happy, everything's great, right? Very rarely stays in the mouth. So unfortunately, the mouth guard is taken out of the mouth. The mouth guard is held in the hand and run around. And something that I wasn't aware of this job, mouth guard is also talking, and they run around an oval. And it's, anyway, but the problem is situations generate all look like impacts. Actually, a lot of them. So it's about 100 to 1 non-impact to impact. How do we get around this? Well, we have the IR device or the IR sensor, proximity sensor. So we actually have a guard which is looking at light scatter from the reflection on the tooth. To do is say, okay, is this close to what something is that we know arguably that it's too far away from something. Now, a bit of light will get reflected, the higher the signal, light, low signal. This is what I'm showing you here. What we can call here, we have 2 visions where we can tell whether something is in values or out of the mouth. So that's a good first step. Perfect, and then we have to step up. But we do also have, which was originally trained specifically, and then, reasonably enough, that it translated from AFL to American football, didn't matter at all, to NRL union, to fighting select sports like UFC. To perform particularly well. So this machine learning model is also one of clearing up these. So coming up, that's what we're up to at the moment. But, well, obviously we would like to solve concussion. Thankfully, I'm not naive enough to, but, we can do collaborations. So folks using the mouthguard, working with universities to collect data together to identify impassive impacts and then before they continue to sustain damage and live their lives. But while we need to keep the lights on, so with the mouth guard itself, so have sensors which allow us to see. So if someone's been hit quite badly, right, they're going to be swaying slightly. Identification, running, how long they spend walking during. Now we have a fairly interesting with for also prescriptive analytics for a particular position. How many times are they hit? Is this probably way over the amount of place? If yes, cool. Maybe them off. That kind of thing. The one that I think is actually coolest, I saved this slide to Sally. We have talked a little bit. We can also measure the mouth guard. So basically by linking the EEG sensor to the mouth guard, changes in the highly vascularized gum or something, and extract, which is lots of fun. The thing is, as you might imagine, so all of those are and taking it in, running around, that kind of produces a hell of a lot of noise. So noise detection algos, which it's currently being developed chest strap, which contains an ECG, and then hope to get a proper, say, 12-lead ECG supply. But of course, all right. Now I've probably way over time.
Yeah, we might wrap up.
So I'll just very and present at least from 2022 and verify varied teams. So one back-end developers, I think, UX and scientists, data scientists, neuroscience as well. So another wonderful team. Now, listening, I apologize for running quite over questions. Yes.
Was
solving concussion detection. A foolproof method, or as far as I'm aware, there exists that allows us to a reasonable degree of certainty or not an impact has, or whether or not someone is concussed from active. And so I consider solving concussion. But hopefully we can detect it a field earlier.
Are there interventions that are early, if you can be like
effects of the concussion.
Yeah, that is unfortunately, as far as I know, I'm not a clinician. Nothing that I'm aware of. But again, concussion and they're remaining on the field, then increases the risk of the severity. So what could have started off as then just gets worse and worse and worse.
You've got a bunch of noise suppressor stuff that you use. Obviously, those there. How do they play in water? Reasoning behind my question. About that all the time, and probably most of my
Yeah. Just to sort of note out for a second. Polo is absolutely brutal, and I've never had.
Underwater hockey, you have a sort of path that you push around the bottom of a pool with the 15s, and at many points in the game, you flick it at someone's face. That's where a lot of the you just put something out there in the pool and put it into get kicked in the head.
Yeah.
Sometimes swift it in. Sometimes you just get stages and can't breathe, and then you don't breathe. So it's a very dangerous sport as an adult.
Yeah.
But yeah, do with the mouth guard that clicks them in and out. And so like that crowd's like, oh, I'm really interested in stuff. Like, have you tested it in water?
Tested it directly in water. So the sensors themselves that were embedded in the mouth permeable membrane. I think they know a bit more about this than I do. So we try to make it in water, but we have done things like, work, and, it's in the mouth, drowned it in saliva just to see if it actually still keeps ticking, to see if it does keep working. Such a brutal sport like that.
Yeah, because it functions off the tooth for proximity. If like when you just drop that in.
Yeah. So still in the mouth, but the problem is the classifier would probably go way too slow. I'm having a good old.
I was just wondering, just with the Gary tablet case, I'm assuming that everyone's going to go through a video response. Would there ever be a case where you've got the data from the sensor and stuff?
We can do that. I'm out of a job. I mean, but like, we do actually have a lot of video footage, and we do have the relevant data. Is the signals look identical? So, okay, how do we determine what it? And again, it's still early days. Why I'm impressing upon to collect, we need to record. Things will become more sophisticated, but we need first in order to change later, a medical change later.
So like the governing bodies why they to
that is very much above my pay.
I thought I get an answer like that.
I am but a humble numbers nerd.
So I basically you describe the relationship between the organisation and
yeah, I believe to the people who interact with them. behind a monitor and look at. Sorry, at the back.
Because I assume it's the same.
To an extent. On the watch, obviously, some of them are going to be using his watch, uses ECG. The PG-based ones, if they shine a light in, offsets the reflection, and yeah. But about this, because she's the expert in the room.
So when you say that application of EG or MRI, your actual, how do you validate your algorithm?
Yeah, so we have our diagnosis, and hey, it was definitely a concussion. So now we have to decide to that around that impact of the level of labeling that we're talking about. Would love it, absolutely love it, if and direct labeling, but yeah, unfortunately, it was really well done. But that's how it's done, and then information.
And you can't get any diagnosis from diffusion MRI?
Sure. So specifically, and also, I think even with mates rates, Swinburne less. But yeah, so just suggested they're able to detect concussion, but again, it's clinically consistent. We're still talking about logs on white matter tracts, aggregate data as opposed to classification for imaging itself. I do not know the answer to that, unfortunately.
We're actually making out that now. Being like hardware, or actually components inside.
So are you making your own gyroscope?
Oh no, those things we get them sort of sense of the actual model numbers or the actual components of it.
Curious that we do have a couple of papers which talk about the sensors you have.
How do you get the data?
That's a terrible pun, but yeah. So it's constantly offloaded at the end of the session. Currently, what we're working on at the moment is opportunistic. So when it's actually within state, offloading as much data as it can.
Not hard enough already.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Publish. studying.
Awesome. Thank you for your talk. I feel like that's actually a really good system. I'm going to deep dive a bit more, actually detect pulse rates. And Imogen Bell was supposed to present tonight, but she is unable to. She with VR and mental health and diversity space, so I think it's really interesting from that perspective. So I think Peter really interesting, like on that night specifically. A little bit of background about me. I did a PhD here in Melbourne at Swinburne University in psychiatry. So I spent in a body image disorder, but also did a whole bunch of experiments with people to inhale oxytocin to the way their brain connected as a function. I then, in the pandemic, decided to do a data science team, which and that was very much. So there's quite a few faces from Whisper here tonight. It was a really, really good experience, but learning to get back into the health space and feel giving back to society. Really, really interested in applying technology, and obviously I know that a lot of people in that space as well. So I'm really very first meetup for deep tech presenting today, and if any health tech in the future, I'm kind of like getting in contact with me. I'm going to be talking about my work at a startup by then. So what we've been developing is an oxygen detection tool. So it uses technology that's very similar. Deep dive into the technology, but give you a little bit of background about the company as well. Who's on the screen here? This is Dr. Barry Dixon. He's one of a consultant here in Melbourne, based in St. Vincent's actually, and he's been working there for years. And basically, he decided that there was a need that to detect when people brain oxygen at the moment. The only way that we can detect drilling a hole in someone's head, which is super invasive. They shine a pupil into the eyes of people, and when your brain oxygen, it takes about a minute or two, like you can imagine. When your oxygen levels drop, 2 minutes to feel. So if they shine a pupil and fully dilated, it pretty much means it's really, really unfortunate. So Barry is technology for about 12 years now, and what we're trying to do is what you're looking at here. Actually, like they drill a hole, like a big drill bit into somebody's far, and that's obviously super invasive, causes the infections and everything like that. So there's for us to be able to detect oxygen in these people in the ICU. The market that we're hitting is being used in the ICU because Barry is very high up there. We ask on people all of the time. A whole heap of hospitals around the world now, but we do dental work out of the ICU. So we're in a really, really lucky, really fortunate. So working on an oxygen detection algorithm here. This I haven't actually got any photos of what we're hitting the market with because we haven't got approval on anything yet. We're in very, very permission to show anybody prototypes today, but you'll get the gist of it. At the moment, we're working on an oxygen detection, hitting the market with, going into the ICUs first, and then we're going to be theatres in the US market first. And as soon as we're done with O2, we're going to be algorithm. So I'm going to be talking today. I like that everybody here, if you're into health, sort of smartwatch or wearable, and an Apple Watch, a Garmin, some point, and seen that it's got flashing lights on. So that's using a technology that's real pulse oximeter, which you put on the tip to detect oxygen levels skin. So absolutely similar to this, but it's very culture too much. But in a different geometry, the skull, and get into the head, back from the brain, and we can detect oxygen. On the right-hand side panel here, it's very similar to our technology, wavelengths, and a slightly different geometry. And it just detects over. We're actually able to detect a pulsar type. It was alluded to in one of the questions before, detect heart rate from a signal coming to somebody's skin. So what you can see here is actually that is sent back from our device, and it's actually a combination of an IC monitor and a brain oxygen monitor, both. That is reflected in. Very assumption is that it's a layer of the brain. So interesting organ in that organs are pulled on the outside of things. Counterintuitive if you're going to hit your head and get a head. But neurons, as Peter alluded to, so that they can talk to each other and send electrical impulses. So cortex. So what you can see is the veins on the outside of the brain, and actually sends blood down. This is very different to a lot of other organs, veins and arteries and everything in a mesh type network. Because there's this nice big on the outside layer of the brain where back from. So this here of just sort of illustrating. So this is your brain, illustrating that we've got these sort of main veins, super highway where blood is drained. Obviously, oxygenated blood goes in. Blood, once it's been used, all of it drained out of the brain. Flashing lights. How do we shine light to actually get any useful information? So back in the 1800s, some physicists out, but they worked out that light wavelengths that and deoxygenated hemoglobin. Shine a light in, and we measure how much light. And in the 1970s, this worked out that this is like a fundamental how pulse oximetry works. Like around 900, but most people use, and then we use 660 nanometers. 660 nanometers reflects back, and 940 deoxygenated blood. You can use these two light wavelengths and get the ratio of the two is in the blood. Sort of a little bit of a background of actually mental operations work. But it shines a red light and then it an insanely fast speed and off, so that we can get the ambient start to get the true signal. And we light that is reflected back by the blood. So I just wanted to talk about, because I want to talk about some of our signal features. We're pretty confident that it is a brain signal. The heart beats and pushes blood into the other chamber of the heart, and these in pressure in the body. And so it pumps into the other one, and that one empties back into the heart, and this is your and you can see this in pressure trace. So if you've ever had a cannula, they'll have all those screens on the side of, and these will show this classic central showing basically the pressure that's pushing the blood out into your circulate and pulling it back in. And this maps up with the electrons coming from the heart, which is just that heart beating. Turn this into an actual is we have to take the and we minus the DC component. The component is the part of the signal that the part that we're really interested in, so venous blood, and the DC component of the signal. So this is, I'm not sure, but this is sort of the fundamental print works and kind of any signal problem. So this is our signal PPG here, the slide that I made for myself. Top here, we've got P1, P, and these just indicate sort of those chains opening and closing. So this here is the diaphragm, which if you know one of those chambers opening and closing, and a jolt in that pressure trace. P1, this is sort of just when your heart beats, and then you can use going up high, and this is that pushing the blood into the brain. Strong in the brain because it's an organ in the body, and so with high amount of blood flow, it actually uses oxygen and energy in our own body. So we've got a really high pressure. In some of our experiments, pulse pressure. So we stress people out, and you can see that our signal is stronger as this pressure trace. But how we actually determine the signal is we minus the blue line here, and there's a red line minus one of those from the other, essentially. And so this point here, oxygen is the highest. So we like to measure, that's what you would do in a skin PPG. We actually have to deconvolve what to trace, so the pressure in the oxygen signal. How do we turn these signals into healthy? So I've spoken that we've got the light detection with his head, measure the amount of light that's coming, amplify those signals on board. We then put them through a line which involves just band, pass, fill, and we've determined, or we've developed the estimates. We have a collaboration set up where we've got over there, and we basically, I'm not a signal processing expert. I mean, in terms of translating those like deep signals, basically just I have it in my head what I need to say to him. Okay, I have basically how we handle it, and then if the signal isn't in our algorithm, so it doesn't go any further. We also have a bunch of denote because they're proprietary, a bunch of filtering and denoising before it would ever hit an algorithm that an oxygen level from. Of feature extraction, and you can use a whole bunch of packages in MATLAB or Python, for example, and that just looks at relative changes in the signal and then would pop the signal that we saw before. Luckily for us, our patient in the ICU, I don't know if you've ever been in, but people are usually very much, so we don't have as much as what Peter has. We have just started a whole bunch of experiments with an about later. In theatre, that noise is going to be a lot more. We've had our device in open heart surgery, not to go into the gory details too much, opening people up and there's like a whole to denoise our signal. In surgery, it's really important oxygen level in the brain. Surgeries here at St. Vincent, but this is one of my biggest learnings since being is we actually saw which is essentially where your heart from your circulatory system stent in or a bypass and some sort of operation on the heart itself. People come out of these surgeries and they have a whole, and so we had our device on one of our clinical trials and we actually saw weird stuff going on in the system. It basically means that during these surgeries, it might be something to do with the pulse. Actually, like instead of blood, it's just like having a hose, and it might be some sort of it doesn't have that pulsatile nature or to behave maybe like a kind of receptor. So even though there's oxygen being, cells mightn't be using it as well, having a whole bunch of complications coming out of these. So that's just one of the sort of applications, our algorithms that are detecting oxygen that we can provide back to the clinician. Clinicians sort of asking us like, and we proved yet we can't actually provide any, but they're like, what's going on there? All of these, so you've got P1, P2, P3, peaks and troughs. We get those of the pulse to try and get the time between the interval. Dropped a dot here and you dropped a dot here. This is your heart rate. So that's how you can determine. We extract actually 66 features is kind of like crazy if you think about it, wavelengths. But we extract 6 wavelengths exactly like this, and we use, I guess, linear fitting on steroids and oxygen level. The brain signal, you can see here on the signal, there's a lot less features, more robust. So we've had to develop this completely new back who can't be here tonight to and turn them into some sort of oxygen. So it's expressed in a percentage number out of is 100% oxygen saturation. Validate this. How do we train all of our features? How do we actually know if in our model validate was in November last year up states, and they got I don't know who would volunteer for this study. See here you've got your internal jugular vein, the main artery from the brain. So it's almost like the superhighway. So what we did was we get catheters as far as they can go into somebody's head. People, we put an oxygen mask on and how much oxygen they're breathing. Their skin pulse oximeter to show like 90% saturation. Then we have a ground truth to validate out. How else we do it was what I was talking about, was we don't actually do this into certain hospitals in Melbourne, like the road, they do actually drill into people's head. So they've been kind enough to let us on, and there's a site over. So we put our sensors on people who've had, and we actually have that probe. Has ever seen this probe data though? I cannot believe that it's like hard to measure brain oxygen at the moment. It's fact, again, as I mentioned before, from it takes 4 hours for it to calibrate, which I think is insights within 2 minutes. Start providing an oxygen value straight away, validating sort of, it takes about 2 minutes to sort of settle and get assurance that we're happy with. So we've got these two sort of validate our algorithm prediction. So what else do I do? I just wanted to talk about sort of side and just more generally. Night is a very kind of small part of the, so obviously we're doing signal development, but our device for FDA at the end of July, so oxygen algorithm. So product verification activities that we do has worked under a regulatory framework, if I'm being completely honest. There's nothing like working in regulatory software development is any of the software development before. Obviously, this device allows doctors to make insights about people's health. Very, very important that everything is stringent processes. So education, everything has to be 10. So at the moment, primarily sort of regulatory education. Now that we've actually, we're also getting the model really nice to be like, okay, we're happy with it's how we have to actually get it embedded into a med. What we do is we sort of buy our prototypes were just a Surface Pro grade tablet, and then we have Python model embedded onto that firmware. Another kettle of fish. It's worked in C#. It's very interesting, and so we're doing that once our model is embedded, where we have to do a whole translation piece, do a whole bunch of product verification with our first algorithm, which is the oxygen. So I just wanted to talk about a little bit of the product we actually do. Experiment, so I thought I would show it to you. Inside here is a device that shall not, but it is a competitive device. A few publications that are out there in the world table, and it's giving an oxygen percentage. And in practice, are not really used. They're purchased and they're in the hospitals for a clinician. They're like, I don't care. And so there's all these publications patients a watermelon or a sweet potato. So I was like, all right. So I wrote the signal. I called it bang tidy. Like gets the signal coming in guardrail to say, okay, is this coming from a human body? I tested this on a sweet potato. Signal comes back. So we were really, really happy with that. To do a whole host of ranges that I won't go into. I just wanted to talk to you. Elliot, one of our actually is growing this. He's got this sweet potato sprouting from it. We'll give you more sweet potato updates in the future. So what is the pathway for? I feel like we're probably at a little bit IQ. When I joined the company, I was the fourth hire. So we're at, I think, to 14 staff members now through a whole bunch of FDA pre-submission. We've finished the pivotal clinical trial information, and then we're submitting an algorithm for 510K. Submit too much because it's boring regulatory stuff. Basically, where you piggyback off the submission, like slip in, and just be like, well, actually, we're just like ever so slightly different. So that's what we're doing. As soon as we're finished with, we are literally just like clicking. Already been working on our intracranial pressure algorithm, signal processing people over at working on the feature extraction in the background, university grade code that, and then sort of take it and make code, and then our software engineers yell at us, and then they have to actually go and put it into. So then we'll have to start this whole process. Yay for me. So we are actually hiring. Do you say if anybody is really interested in the I'm actually looking for a data scientist to start. So if you know anybody in signal processing and has experience, just to send them my way. Because I'd love to do advertisements because I don't have time. Expanding out into my networks, software engineers. So people who have experience, but then are also talented. You would know what I mean when there's like Python and then there's like actual software Python. Not so much an analyst, but somebody who's more on that of things. And then here's a did as a team. You can see that you can see that Olga, who's and this is her friend Elliot, and that's Barry, the founder of the photo shoot with the device. Does anyone have any questions?
What are the known issues with they behave very differently depending on skin color? Similar things with your cranial stuff.
Great question. I was supposed to put a slide in. Actually, our FDA trial, the Fitzpatrick scale, which is the way that you can, and 60% of our had a Fitzpatrick of like 5. So our sensors are not really, yeah. No, I did that verification. Actually, it doesn't perform that self, which is where cerebral oximeters fall down, reflected back, is lower there. And we're looking at the ratio of the two. It doesn't matter on the signal amplitude as much. Is kind of the theory that we've come up with. Density is a little bit higher. We actually in the device itself, so you can see how much light is sent in on a darker skin.
So I assume false positive, false negative.
Yeah.
And scenario.
I had a slide about alarms. It's like nobody was. So obviously the whole panel to a clinician when below a threshold that you can set in our device itself. So it's a problem that we have and like months of work, Jack and I, on coming up with our alarm logic, and we for a clinician to be alerted in a hospital, they have like because I had a bit of a, I guess, emotional crisis at one point where I that I'm designing is being used to detect to save people's lives. Like, oh, and he's like, yeah, but all of these using, they're looking at different measurements coming out, and they're observing the patient as well. So, okay, to the clinician, hey, you might sit and do your due diligence with all the other devices, and so we also have where the clinician can change the threshold at which the alarms go off and yelling at them all the time as well.
Bunch about, well, let's say we'll get an example of an alternative device that,
Yeah.
And just to give some data and hopefully across in.
Yeah.
That's kind of validation.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of proof, do you need to do any sort of system works, or do you only need to do the okay?
Oh yeah. So with these sort of guidelines that you then have to verify. So there's a whole bunch of steps. They're very boring, and then there's a whole requirement. Everything has to be unique. How we actually, our patient is arms, which is the average. So we calculate that and it has to the data that we've collected.
So the FDA is approving basis output is not outside that range of software engineering as opposed to a system inside.
Exactly. Every tiny little thing has to be unit test, overall system tests as well. A bunch of FDA pre-submission had with them, and they were the ones who actually advised and is the tolerance range that happens. Cool. And again, please contact with us if you're interested in getting involved. If you've got workshop ideas yourself, or you know somebody who you present, you've been doing space tech, we've been talking about, if you have anything that you think might be interesting, really interested in technology and the things that I've gleaned from even just a few of the organizing committees where actually all using different applications, and I feel like I'm really going to come out in the wash, so I'm really excited for that. Cool.
Okay.